So today is June 5th, 2020, and here with us on the Houston Asian American Archive is Principal Ying Chung, who is the principal of the Mandarin Immersion School. Thank you so much, Principal Ying Chung. My name is Ann Shi. Thank you for your time and joining us to talk about the current pandemic we're in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Ann.
Yeah, so to start, can you share with us the impact of the school and your life?
Yes. Well, this is impacting everybody. My school, my personal life, just about everybody. Also, for school, from very early, about a few days before we were going out for spring break, all of a sudden HISD decided, because of the current news and health concerns, the district decided to start summer spring break a day early, and then at the time they were saying that okay, we'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks. But then if you follow the news, or anyone who's watching this follow the news, the rate of infection just keep climbing up, and then we keep postponing the school reopening day, and then later on the governor decided we're not coming back for this school year. And then for our students and their family, there's a very, very heavy impact, because they have to having to juggle their own, the parents, they have to manage their own, career and work life, as well as, having to deal with, teaching students at home, kind of just have to monitor their children all of a sudden. So at the very beginning, it was very stressful, from, the email communication we get from the parents and the teachers. So it was very difficult. And for me personally, I feel the workload, being a principal is already difficult, but, all of a sudden our workload just, drastically increased, because, we're having to move our traditional classroom all into a virtual space, and that takes a lot of planning, and it's not a one-person job. So with that, I really appreciate our teachers and my administration team to really work together. We were working really long hours, trying to make plans, trying to communicate with the parents, just to overcome a lot of technical difficulties and whatnot.
Yeah, was the transition at the beginning stressful?
To say the least, because we were talking about, and not just me personally, but most of our teachers, they have never, taught in a virtual space before, having to manage to learn the platform. For number one, we have Zoom meeting. Zoom is very easy to use, user-friendly type of platform. HISD sponsor offers, Microsoft Teams as a, online learning tool, but they're all different systems, and then it takes quite a bit to learn something new, especially, the lesson has to go on a daily basis, and, so that's one stress. And at the same time, if something doesn't work, we have to kind of, because it happens so quickly, right? So our teachers having to become a problem solver. How do I do this online? How do I learn this feature, this and that? But with that stress, with that challenge, I see people come together. Our team, our teachers, they work, closely, and they're building really good partnership with each other. So, and I see a lot of, in the end, I see a lot of positive, coming from this pandemic.
That's great to hear. So do you have any fun stories you would like to share that happened during the pandemic?
Fun story. I have a lot of heartwarming story, from parents stepping up and say, Mr. Ying, Miss so-and-so, teacher so-and-so, I see that you guys need this help. and this is my expertise, so you can read, this is my phone number, reach me anytime for tech support, for example. We have parents donating computer. My school is very fortunate in that most of the families, they're they're able to provide, students with, technology devices. They have, home internet. But our other HISD schools, some of the schools, they still struggle to get, adequate equipment till this day. And then we have parents step up and say, Mr. Ying, here's my donation. This is the laptop. Let's help that other school. And then some other story, we see parents come together, they have their own chat room, chat group, and talking about, well, all of a sudden we don't have a traditional graduation, and what do? We still want to leave our students a memorable, promotion ceremony, for example. So they come together and to put together, we had a yearbook for our 8th grade graduates, but the print shop, is closed due to, the pandemic. They're saying, no, we still have to have something, for the students to, remember us by. So they collect pictures very quickly, do a small version of the yearbook, and then, they coordinate car parade, and they went out and purchased beach towel, with our school logo as souvenirs, and then they coordinate the logistics of planning for the virtual ceremony and all of things. So I see a lot of this kind of, good stories about people coming together and work as a team. So I really, it's very heartwarming to see that.
Wow, that's, yeah, really inspiring sharing. I felt like with our right students, some people have feedback saying that during this, as a leader in your school, how do you keep your students motivated?
I'm sorry, the last about 10 seconds you were breaking up. Could you repeat that again, please?
Sure, sure. I was just wondering, as a principal, how do you keep your students motivated and studying and coming in class and handing in their homework?
How do we keep them? That's a really good question. We do have lessons every day. Many teachers offer live lessons. So we make a point to establish that connection with students still on a daily basis, even though this is all done virtually. Me personally, I feel that I need to speak with all of our students. So I prepare, a live speech, and just to, say to them, hey, we students, we all miss you. And then this is very difficult for you, me, the parents and teachers, but at the same time, it's a, we have to get together, stay together and get through this. And then I want them to learn about, we try to turn every, opportunity into a positive. So this is about, caring for yourself, your health, being mindful about, your hygiene habit, for example. It's another opportunity to learn about, technology, to learn about how to, acquire knowledge, virtually. So I made a speech with them. At the same time, we want teachers to continue to follow each student's participation. They're still getting a grade, so the teachers still follow, something called pacing guide. Basically, it's a planning that every week, what skills we're teaching. So we still follow that pacing guide and teach lesson, as planned. So that's how we try to keep our student engaged. One more thing. So, and it's not just all academic, as you know, in the school we have, your academic classes, but at the same time you have enrichment ancillary classes such as music and PE. So we continue to offer that, so and with that, I really appreciate our ancillary enrichment teachers. They are continuing to offer, health, activities that the students can watch the video and follow at home. And then our music teachers, she kind of coordinate a little bit. It's not necessarily like a symphony, that was our ultimate goal. We haven't quite reached that because, time was very short, but still she was able to, get a few students together and play instrument, and they record that, and then we play, and we put that video on our school website and tell our students, hey, see, this is your classmates playing music, and hoping to, bring that enrichment to their life, during these stressful times.
Wow, this is great. And how are the students adapting? Do you think there's any difficulty?
Some love it, and others, kind of struggle a little bit. It really depends. We see a lot of students strive because, it's about managing your time, and then at the same time, they have that flexibility to say, okay, I'm ready to complete this assignment. So on their time, they work on a certain assignment, but it takes a lot of self-discipline. At the same time, some of the students, it's easy to, not get engaged because, you have to, make a point and say, okay, this is the time I need to get online. I need to learn the lesson and do homework and whatnot. So, if those students is less, dependent, they kind of need that extra push from either the teachers or the parents to say, hey, Chao, you need to, study. So we see, different reaction and results.
That's great. So do you happen to have students that experienced any like anxiety or depression during this period and having to deal with that?
We do. We see students. It's very stressful, not just for adults, but also it's obvious, for students as well. One, they're not able to see their friends in person. I mean, even though they kind of see each other online, but that human to human interaction is still missing, and it's obvious that, that they miss their classmates. Our school, we're fortunate, we have a social worker, and Miss Lyons, we asked her to, really monitor and communicate with our teachers, and see which students are really in need of that social emotional, I guess, guidance. So Miss Lyons will reach out to them and just kind of give them some comfort, and just kind of alleviate some of that stress level. So that's also happen. And a lot of our students are very high achieving, so it's, and they want to do the best they can. And oftentimes, they also, like us, the teachers and adults, we struggle with technology. Some of the students struggle with technology too. And then with that, they are not able to complete a certain assignment, and they really get frustrated. But fortunately, our teachers are very flexible, and they reach out to these students on an individual basis, and really help them, figure out the technical difficulties, and we're able to help them. But, so the stress come and go, when you are dealing with something you can't do right away, along with that comes with the stress. But we try to problem solve. We try to offer everything we can to alleviate that, and with that, the stress level will come, go down also. So
Great. So can you talk about the situations with the teachers? Um, do you have everyone keep their job? And is there things that you have to worry about for the teachers situation?
no, thankfully everyone is keeping their job. We don't have to let we didn't need to, let anyone go. So that's the fortunate part. So that's all I have to say about that.
Great. So moving on to a little bit about yourself as a principal, and also, I guess, as a family with your like loved ones. How have your relationship during this pandemic with your loved ones changed?
Um, it really strengthened my significant other. She's also in education, and so often talk about, hey, what are your schools, experiencing, and this is how my school is dealing with this, and vice versa. We kind of just very much exchange, our thoughts and ideas. So that, after work, I guess. So it's really great, knowing that, that she knows what I'm dealing with, and I know exactly what she has to go through. Uh, um, so that's very, it works out great.
Great. So what do you find out yourself doing more when you're staying at home more?
What do I find out myself doing more?
Yeah, say your top three stay-at-home activity nowadays.
Activity.
Mhm.
Answering emails, and answering emails. Um, are you talking about at work, or on my own private time?
Yeah, like since our kind of life structure and time management has completely changed, what has been your most like yeah like time-consuming activity now?
I have to say, it's the virtual meeting, and then closely followed by, the email, because, we're not in a brick and mortar school, so it's not like I can just walk down the hallway and just, start talking to my staff and all me very quickly, like I as I recall, it's just every day it's, virtual meeting after virtual meeting. And then, with different grade level teachers, with, my admin team, making plans and, just updating and follow up on how each class is doing. And then also, I am, kind of just wanted to participate in virtual lessons too. So often, I really do have like multiple computers going on one hand, I'm meeting with a certain group of teacher, and a different computer is, in a classroom. I also want to participate and see what, how lessons are going on in a virtual environment. And occasionally I would, pause the meeting, or turn off the camera, and I would say hi and greet the students, and just really trying to be involved and be multiple places at the same time. I guess in a way it's a blessing, because, in virtual space you can, be at different places at the same time. Um, but also with that is that everybody is, communicating in email, right? So like they will send you your one question in email, so often, you're answering like hundreds of emails, just uh, different inquiries. And so I found myself, after a long day of, virtual meetings, 5 o'clock, and then, my second job, I joke about this, like my second job, it really is the same job, but the second part of my job begins about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, because that after those virtual meeting, then I can sit down and start seeing, oh, okay, what's going on, who emailed me with what question, and then I start responding. And with that, it makes the work day, very long. But no complaint though. It's just, I understand this is, what needs to be done as a principal, and I'm very happy to do it. So I guess that's just what my life looks like, during this pandemic.
I see. So you're working more than usual. Even.
Absolutely, yes.
Um, so talking about something that's been happening like more recently, and I guess Asian American in this country, we also have experienced a lot of different things through this pandemic. And as we've been seeing on the news, and I'm not sure if this happened to you personally in any way, that we've been experiencing more like racial segregation, and people are being like a little bit racist, I would say, by calling the China virus or the common flu. What do you think as Asian Americans we can do in this type of scenarios?
Um, it's really, really hard to, be on the both side, really. On one hand, as an Asian American, I feel saddened by, you know, I guess getting called, okay, you guys are the reason for this pandemic. On the other hand, I mean, I can relate the fear, the frustration of you know, I guess different ethnicity, people of different ethnicities saying that, okay, my, you know, this pandemic is sourcing from a certain, you know, region of the, you know, world. But I think understanding of each other, having an understanding, having that benefit of the Tao will go a long way. Um, and I often, you know, kind of reflect and think, you know, it's part of our job really as educator is to teach our children, you know, and the community too about, you know, like, I guess seeing things from someone else's perspective. You know, it's easy to call blame, say it's all your fault, but sometimes, you know, it takes a lot of, you know, I guess education. It takes someone to reflect and think, okay, no, it's just because you know, this pandemic come from one region. It's not all of Asian people's fault. It's not. I mean, we have to talk about using data and evidence to make a statement and not spreading rumor. So I think it takes everyone to take a step back and having that understanding of each other to I guess to get through this tough time together.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as educator, it's great that we have someone like you to help our children get more perspectives in times like this. Especially recently with the George Floyd's death causing the social movement. Do you have anything you like to share?
Um, do it honestly, I couldn't finish the video. I mean, I saw, you know, the officer put his knee on George Floyd's neck, and I could not finish that video. It was very difficult to watch, and I think that it's very sad that, and I do acknowledge that, you know, the different treatment of, you know, different ethnicity, they do exist, and it takes a lot um, to change that. Um, I I wasn't prepared to talk about this. There's just a lot to talk about. But I guess in short, I at the same time, I think rioting, you know, is not right. I guess I am glad to see more and more peaceful protests. I mean, I do follow the news on a daily basis, and what I do see is at first there was a lot of rioting, looting, but I think slowly, you know, we have, you know, more and more participation in those protests, and then a lot of peaceful protests, you know, and then I think that's a positive, you know. I think using, you know, violence is not a good way to solve a problem, but with more people participating in peaceful protests, this will get more people's attention of the problem that really exists in this society. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for providing a perspective. Yeah, this happened during the pandemic, although it's not directly related. And just wondering, looking into the future, we've all experienced the power of technology. How do you see the teaching like model would change? For example, whether this online virtual learning model would continue to sustain even after the pandemic.
100%. I mean, I personally, I tell my teachers that regardless, you know, when or whether or not we go back to school, you know, brick and mortar school in fall, um, this virtual learning will not go away. This is the virtual distance learning is here to stay in one form or another. And in many ways, this is kind of a future, and it makes, and it can be a very effective, efficient way of delivering, instructions and education. Um, Number one, once you recorded something, it's always there. So that flexibility of, your child, today I'm not ready to learn this lesson, but you can always go back and review the video. So that's number one. And then also, it's not, virtual learning is not limited by, any tangible space or, a number of students. For example, you can have, in a traditional classroom, we have 22 students or so, but in a virtual classroom, and assuming everyone is ready to be, actively engaged, I mean, you can have 1,000 students, and it doesn't make any difference, because this is all virtual. So, you can, like, I guess with distance learning, you can impact very many people in a very, small amount of time, and not using a lot of resources. Not to mention, you can quickly link whatever, information that's already online. So this is what I, tell my teachers, that, definitely take advantage of all these training classes and get proficient at, delivering instructions on the, a virtual platform, because this is going to benefit their career, down the road.
Yeah, definitely. And seeing the next generation being so attached to technology in a way, do you have any thoughts about any, say, danger to the technology being, the children being so attached to it?
Um, we really do have concern about that. We have parents and even students complain that, Mr. Ying or teacher so and so, I've been stuck in front of a computer for 4 or 5 hours, and it's really hard on the eyes, and or physically, and so I think we need to be mindful of, how much time we are asking our students, and maybe even parents, to engage in this, screen, a little screen. And then, I guess that's why we also want to provide other enrichment activities to disengage our students from the technology. I mean, we do hear a lot of stories and say, the parents, they actually have more family bonding time, that they would take morning walk, afternoon walk, just so that they can, disengage from the, computer screen. So.
Yeah, it's needed. um, Great. That's all of my questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to share, Principal Yang?
Um, no, well, I just want to, express my appreciation. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to, to interview with you and to be considered, and then, to have a conversation about, my life and, professional life during this pandemic time.
Well, thank you for your contribution, and we were very lucky to be able to, yeah, to have a principal that is so organized and well thought. And thank you for taking care of the students and the children.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.